my name is Ginger Bell, and I want to welcome you to the Finance of America Wholesale Mortgage Conversations from the Field. And today I have with me Raoul Badde. And Raoul has 19 years in the industry, Raoul. I know when you told me that, I said, no way. You started when you were, I don't know, what, 10?
Yeah, I was 10 going on 20, but sure.
And Raoul, I've had the pleasure of knowing for a long time. I know you've been with Finance of America for almost 3 years now. And you recently got your CMBA with the MBA, which is your Certified Mortgage Bankers Associate. And so we actually were in Austin when you were working on finalizing that. So I'm going to actually start off and ask you, what was that like and why did you do that?
So I got my CMB through the Mortgage Bankers Association. And for me, the CMB was a designation, an opportunity for me to learn more parts of the entire mortgage cycle, right? So I've been in sales, the front end of the business, basically my entire career. And I did not know a lot of the different parts that drove ultimately what I was selling out in the field. And before I was in wholesale, back in 2004, I was on the brokerage side for 4 years, 3.5 years. So for me, the CMB was the opportunity to really get deep dive on the education piece and better understand all the elements at play from the lead up to the loan that I sell and then after the loan closes, and what that encompasses, et cetera. So there was a lot of intensive studying that went on for that to be able to do it. There's a 6-hour written exam and then a 1-hour verbal exam where you get tested. And so very challenging, lots of fun.
Very good. Well, and I think knowing there are so many pieces that go into our business and knowing how all of those pieces work together makes you a better account executive, first of all. But then also I think just gives you a better understanding as far as what originators are going through as well in their aspect of it, because that is one piece of it. But then also the wholesale side and the secondary side and all those pieces. So learning a lot, I think, is important. So one of the things, and we do a lot of webinars at Finance of America, and normally we're going through information, products, programs. I do a lot of training on, obviously, taking and leveraging the products and sharing that information with realtors or with consumers. And one of the things that I think in starting this series was to be able to have conversations on what you see in the field. And the beginning of this the idea started from you and I, Raoul, just having a conversation back in January. And it was, what are you seeing? What are the trends you're seeing? What's happening? What are some of the challenges that brokers are being faced with? What programs are working? Where are you seeing brokers really utilizing certain programs? And so that was my goal in starting this is, I love being able to find out, hey, what's happening out there? And just like for you to get your CMB, to be able to learn all the other aspects. So that's really the goal. And as we're going through the information today, if you have questions you want to ask Raoul, type those in there and let us know what they are. For our agenda today, we are going to be talking about staying competitive. I'm going to look at my notes here. In the online mortgage world, which is definitely one we live in, adding products to expand your ability to say yes to more loans. And I think that's important. We actually yesterday had a webinar on the FAM commercial product, the residential commercial product, and had several hundred people on there, lots of great questions, tons of questions. And so really having the ability to leverage some of those is important. And then finally, thinking about the long-term value of the client and their family. So let's start off with staying competitive in the online mortgage world. So, and I'll start off with this, Raoul. What are the components of our online world that we live in? What do you see as those pieces that are so important technically?
The issue at hand is that most consumers today start their loan process by going into Google, right? Um, they type in local mortgage lender or find me a mortgage rate or whatever. What's the rate that I qualify for? I think mortgage calculator is one of the most searched terms out there for consumers. And so they're always trying to figure out, if they're trying to beat the originator at their own game, right?
Right.
Ultimately.
They're
And
better educated at doing that.
so there's more and more tools today that allow the general consumer to be able to do that, right? And everywhere you go, and then once they've punched something into Google to search, they get everywhere they start to browse and interact online, they get then mortgage ads are placed in front of them, right? So they're constantly being presented with different marketing opportunities to interact with a company.
Right.
And the brokers are then having to compete against fact and fiction in terms of what consumers are seeing as a option, right, for interest rates versus what that consumer actually qualifies for. Some sites will drive you through a tool called Credit Karma. We saw yesterday got bought by Intuit. Credit Karma has a scoring mechanism that doesn't at all relate to FICO, right, or any of the three credit bureaus that we as mortgage lenders use. So a consumer will say, well, look, I have a 740 Credit Karma score, and expect the pricing to be correlative to that. Come back through and get what we use for credit scoring, and the scores will be in the 600s, right? And that changes pricing, and that changes what they're qualified for, and what the LO can sell them. And so there's a lot of competition just getting the eyeballs and getting the consumer into your ecosystem as an originator.
Right.
And so how do you do that as an originator, and what are the tools that you do to drive the opportunity into your space, right? So that they're calling you as opposed to calling a Quicken call center, a Freedom call center, any number of,
Depot, any one of them.
Anyone that's got online ads out there that are actively advertising. Again, the consumer started by searching for terms related to mortgage. And now the way the internet works today is they will be consistently presented with advertising from players that are paying to be shown in front of that consumer, right? So as local originators in their local communities and their local markets, they have to then pull in their consumers in other ways. And that it's not easy, right? It's expensive. AdWords are expensive. Pay-per-click is expensive. None of it has very good ROI anymore, and so you have to be able to be discoverable as a loan originator in your marketplace.
Right. So what are some of the things, last week we actually did a webinar on the power of Google in your business and how to leverage that local pack. So how to make sure that on your Google business page that you're getting to the front of the pack, and Google has analytics they use for that, but it's also based on reviews. And so just to make sure that you're getting those Google reviews, and I know a lot of people use Social Survey, and there's different venues as far as getting reviews, but Google only looks at Google. So what are some of the things that your brokers are using to be able to get into that local search, get in front of Google where people are looking?
Yep. So obviously Google is a excellent tool. Google also picks up high rankings of third-party sites too, right? So, a few years ago, everybody was talking about Yelp. And I would say that Yelp is related and is still a required avenue as a resource because consumers will shop there. They'll utilize that. I would say Zillow is another mechanism to get rankings on, right? And then Google adds all of those components together in its ranking and criteria, right? And Google then is another way. So step one is put your business on Google, right? So find it on, get your location on the map, add your logo, add your contact, add your web URL, office hours, do all that stuff. I mean, in the past, I've added all that information for my customers in Google Maps. And it's always surprising to me, to find people that have any volume of business and then you can't identify their office location. Right?
Yeah. And
So
Google doesn't always make it easy, but if you do it and they'll send you a business card just to confirm that you have that, and then you have to put the code in.
right.
So those are things you can do. And then you can post articles onto your Google page.
Yep.
And Google searches for those terms that people are searching for. And I think that's the other thing, is being aware of the search term. So you can go to a website that's called Answer the Public. And if you do that, like I do it, I just type in mortgage and you can find out what are the keyword searches that people are looking for. And then so adding those hashtags into your Google page can help to increase your ranking as well.
Yep. And all of it starts with the originator or the owner of the business, or a combination of the two, reaching back out to their existing database and remarketing them.
Right.
Leading with referrals is one of the number one components of creating confidence in the business between the consumer and the business. And so Google 5-star rating, Yelp 5-star rating, those are part and parcel to new opportunities. But of course, if you go back through your existing database of consumer, if it's 200, 500, 2,000, and get them to get them to give you that referral online in those areas, that's step one. And then as new participants come along, they naturally discover you. I have a customer that he started by helping his family member. They were building a business together, or his family member had been in the business some 35 years. And they brought this individual in as sort of assistant type LOA. And the first thing that they did was they went on to Yelp, and Yelp, they just focus on Yelp reviews, right? So year one, it was a down year, rate environment, all these different things. And we're going back now 4 years, but, they closed 38 units. They went through their existing database of clients who they'd been in their county again for 30 plus years, right? And so they went through the database of clients and emailed them all and asked them all for referrals on Yelp. And the primary thing with Yelp is you can't cast a net that's too wide, right? So Yelp, if you say, I want to compete in all of California, then you're going to stack up against all the other higher ranking people in your segment, and you will fall down the list. So what this company did, or what these folks did, was they limited their scope and their audience to, it was a geographic radius of something like 80 miles or 60 miles on the Yelp map for the business page.
They were.
What's that?
They tightened the map, then the net to where they were.
Right. So then they were only competing against other people on Yelp in that space, right? Or in that geographic area. And by doing that, they immediately raised their visual, how they position themselves. And then they went through and got Yelp. Year two, after going through this exercise, they more than doubled their business. They went to like 85 loans.
Wow.
And market conditions were effectively flat, right? So it wasn't a function of like refinance volume and any of that. Right. It was literally, they were getting now calls off of Yelp. And at that point, it was free. I think they might have been paying $50 a month. Yelp reached out to them because they had so many 5-star reviews. And then at some point, they started paying a significant amount of money. It was north of $3,000 a month, right? In the subsequent year, while they're paying and all this stuff, they actually went from, and again, this is a 2-person operation, they went from 80 odd loans in year 2 to 140 odd loans in year 3, right? By this point, they continuously push on, Yelp reviews, and then they layered in Google ads, and not ads, I should say, Google 5-star reviews, right? So then they layered in Google 5 stars, and they say, so now they have multiple hundred 5 stars on Yelp, multiple hundred on Google, right? And they've since cut back their spending with Yelp because they naturally are at the top of the stack when you search for mortgage broker in that market.
Because of their organic that they had done on Google.
Correct. Well, because of the work that they've done with Yelp in general, they had enough 5 stars that they could rank on their own without having to pay for any kind of premium, right? And so now there's, a national lender above them, obviously, that's paying to be there, and then them just organically. So their Yelp spend has gone from $3,000 down to, I think he's down to $400 or $500 a month.
Wow.
And then Google, on the other hand, is absolutely free, right? And they have now north of 200 5 stars on Google. And then when you go in between those engines, right, they are closing 2 to 4 transactions a month simply off of Yelp and Google review.
Which is free ads and referrals, which is the strongest. And that's the thing people are looking for, is they're going and they're looking for those reviews. So if they're searching online, and because they have done that with the reviews, they're showing up in that local pack in the net that they've put together.
Right.
And Google bases not just on 5-star reviews or number of reviews, but they look at most current reviews. And that ranked higher than anything else for Google. And we'll put them in that it's the top 3 as far as their local pack. So that is very brilliant of them to do that. And it's easy for you to do. It just, takes a little bit of time to make sure you're getting those reviews. So that's it. Going back to your database, making sure that you're reaching out to them, asking them for the review, asking them to do other reviews. And it doesn't just have to be your database. You can ask your real estate partners for reviews.
Right.
You can ask your referral partners for reviews. You can ask, whoever you're doing business with in some capacity, you can ask for reviews. And so it doesn't have to necessarily be a customer, but it could be someone that you are relatively doing business with. So that's fantastic.
And they're at their average loan balance out there at north of $400,000. And you think about 3 loans a month. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of volume, right? So 15 million in annual loan volume simply off of Google and Google AdWords and things like that. I mean, most people would love the opportunity to close 15 million, let alone, have it basically come in for free.
Right. And that's an uplift. And that's, so paying attention to what's going on. We live in an online world. People are searching online, and it's not just Google, it's YouTube as well. YouTube is the new free public TV.
Right.
And so being able to start a YouTube channel and put education out there, videos, people are searching for information online, especially our millennial market. And we're moving into our Gen Z market. I don't know what happens after Gen Z. But
we start over.
Is that what we go back to the baby boomers? I don't know. Something like that. But so all of those things are important. And then to throw that in on top of the search, as far as searching online, there's the voice search now. So going to your, Siri or your Alexa or your Google Home, all of those are ways that people are searching. They're searching by voice. So it's not just a matter of typing it in. And that's something completely different, because now they're getting a voice back. And so being able to get into that, and it's actually a different platform for each one of these voice searches. And so that's kind of the next trend as well to pay attention to as far as the online world we live in.
But all of it ties back to, have you got yourself situated in those ecosystems so that like an Alexa or Siri could even identify you, right?
Right.
Because they're ultimately tying themselves into a Google framework, right, in terms of search and that capacity, because you can't create, unless you create an audio channel within Alexa or you create an audio channel through one of those outfits, there's not a way to be directly identifiable, right? So if you wanted to go from a content perspective over and above video, then you could create an audio channel with Alexa around mortgage, if that, and create mortgage content, audio mortgage content, if that was something you were, in tune with. But it all starts with initially getting into those Google pages and all that stuff, and just basically being discoverable, right? And then how are you outside of even that, then it's a function of creating content, and it's creating interaction with your audiences, in terms of utilizing the various tools. And, as originators, I think what's critical to remember is that we are in sales and marketing as much as we are in number crunching and loan analysis and things like that. And that, I feel, is the hardest part for a lot of loan officers, probably 70% or more of the mortgage origination population.
Right.
Really putting on the marketing brain element of the business. And I, equate it to real estate agents. Real estate agents spend approximately 40% of their revenue on marketing, right? And everyone's like, well, they make 2.5% and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, once they've spent their marketing revenue, I mean, their earn is no different than an LO, and an LO can actually get away with spending far less than 40%, right? And have tremendous impact in their local economy in terms of generating opportunities. And with all the tools that are available, Facebook, Instagram, I mean, there's folks that are doing like TikTok channels now, right? And like all these different tools. I mean, there's a number of different ways, and then just interacting with your consumer set and your community out there that doesn't cost you anything out of pocket outside of time, right? But if you think about the fact that the content you create is not going to generate a loan today, it's the content you create that's going to generate a loan 6, 9, 12, 24 months down the road. When somebody goes online and searches, that's how we have to think as originators from a sales and marketing perspective. And that has been the hardest shift for most of the folks that I see out in the field. The example I gave earlier, that was 2 generations of business, working on it. And it was the next generation that came along and said, hey, how we're going to get loans is different than it used to work, right? How we're going to, plant our flag in the middle of the field is different than it used to be, right? It's no longer just going to the local realtor meetings and going to the local community center events and things like that. We have to be available to a very wide audience that will eventually find us.
Right.
And that's
get in front of them to be able to find you when they're searching. And so that's one of the keys to be able to do that. Eventually
find you, right?
Yep.
They're not going to find. It's not like it's an immediate thing. Your ROI isn't that measurable. You could, I think with a 2 or 3 year look back, you can go through it and get a determination. But again, if it's free outside of your time, that's a pretty high return. So anyway.
Yeah. So I'm going to move on to our next a question, but I'm going to ask those of us, the audience, how many of you have your Google business page set up? And how many of you are asking for reviews and using those to make sure that you are getting at the local pack and getting in front of those searches? And so type in the chat box, type in the Q&A, just let us know how many of you, are you doing it? Yes. Are you doing it? No. Do you want to know how to do it? I actually just did a webinar on this a couple weeks ago. We have the recording that's available in FAMU, so you can go in and see that recording, and we can certainly do it again. So just type in there and let us know. And then I'm going to move on to our next question, which is adding products to expand your ability to say yes more often. So what does that mean, and how can they do that?
So the loan environment, the lending environment is changing, right? Step one in all of this is that currently we're beholden to Dodd-Frank for qualifying a mortgage loan, right? And so the definition of a QM loan was set to expire January 1st of next year. We saw CFPB, in January of this year come out, and it looks like it's going to be a 12-month extension. But the 43 debt to income ratio comes out of Appendix Q, which is a function of Dodd-Frank, or which is part of Dodd-Frank, right? And it's just a leftover. It's a leftover element. I think what happened was they went through all the agency guidelines. They found the 43 DTI in an FHA handbook, and they said that looks reasonable,
Yeah,
right?
sounds like sense.
That
Yeah.
seems reasonable. Then they had to figure out what to do because, of course, we were getting automated approvals with higher ratios, right? So they said, okay, well, for the next 7 or 8 years, while we figure all this stuff out and we implement all these regulations, we'll give what's called a QM patch, right? The QM patch says if you have an automated approval, DU, LPA, and you're selling at the Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie Mae, which is say FHA, VA, USDA, so long as you have your automated and it's approve eligible, then you have a saleable loan and you toss it into one of those buckets, right? So, and now 95 or whatever percent of the business, depends on who you ask, 96, 95% of the business is done agency, right? Well, in that process, we've pushed a whole bunch of borrowers to the side of the road, right? Eligible individuals that actually have very good credit, have very good assets, right? They just don't have traditional documentation of income.
Right.
What has also happened is that with this QM patch was a recognition over time that, as it turns out, debt to income ratio as a measure of a borrower's ability to repay, while it measures the borrower's ability to repay, it doesn't change the outcome in the event of default. What actually made more of a difference in the event of default was a borrower's assets on account. So CFPB have acknowledged this, HUD have acknowledged this, Treasury have acknowledged this, all in their proposals for agency reform, right, or housing finance reform. So we know that how we're going to qualify borrowers is changing, and we, over the last few years, non-QM has come into the marketplace. So today, what we call a non-agency loan, if it's not jumbo, is called non-QM. And the other thing that we know is that of the agency business, about 19% of the total loan volume, dollar volume, is actually above a 43% DTI.
Okay.
Right. So that tells us it's a big thing. Like if the QM patch goes away overnight, 20% of the business has no home.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, it's not going to be that dramatic. However, that also, you look at an agency rate sheet and you look at all the various loan level price adjustments that come in there, right? And some borrowers get pushed into a higher cost loan simply as a function of loan to value and their credit score, which are risk determinants. So then you take that same borrower and you put them into a non-QM loan, and then the potential is that they have a lower cost, right, today because those loan level price adjustments aren't there necessarily.
Right.
So those pieces added with this consumer set that are traditionally business owners that have been kept out of the qualifying spectrum, right, mean that there's a expanded opportunity to reach them. And so how are we reaching them? We're reaching them with this non-QM product, and it's bank statement qualifying, right? 1 year of 1040 qualifying. There's innumerable other programs that are out there. We have a couple that are incoming through our wholesale channel to the brokers space that will give additional asset-based qualifying tools, right?
Right. Well, the bank statement loan program obviously is one. And that one was one when I first got started in the industry. And, one of my first jobs as an account executive was with Argent, and Argent started out with the bank statement loan program. And so it's a great program that FAM has to be able to have someone qualified based on their bank statements. The other thing about that too, you think about how this next generation is earning money, and they have multiple sources of income. So they may have a full-time job, but at night they are a video streamer, or they have a YouTube channel, or they sell something on Amazon, or, there's so many different ways that people have alternative income now.
Yep. That
being able to use that to qualify is very important. And so, just in terms of, first of all, being able to say yes more. So being aware of how you can say yes more. And then also understanding, what are the lifestyles? What other income is happening? Do they have Airbnb income that's coming in, or they have a room in their house that they're renting? I mean, all those different things. So being able to have another alternative like that, I think is so important. And who knows what's going to happen? They kick the can down the road for a little bit on this QM patch, but eventually it's going to go away. So,
There, the CFPB statement was the most clear. HUD and Treasury both made recommendation to the rewriting of Appendix Q, right? The CFPB came out, and ultimately CFPB are the sort of guardian of Dodd-Frank. And so when they come out and say that Appendix Q is burdensome on the industry, right, and it is a restrictive element in terms of inviting private mortgage capital back into the space, which is really what all of us want, is to not be under this, conservatorship environment for origination. And to have product options and flexibility. And when the CFPB, that's the watchdog for Dodd-Frank, come out and say Appendix Q as it's written is too burdensome, I mean, that's what we all want, right, from an origination standpoint. We're never going to get back to the Argent days that we saw. But at the same time...
And for good reason, those days are gone.
Well, look, at the same time, there's a pragmatic approach to offering credit and bringing consumers back into the space. And to your point, future of work, how someone earns a living today dynamically is changing every single day, right? I mean, we've got a huge population migration into large city center areas, right? So people are moving off of, and some of the traditional earning methods that were out there are being left behind. Long-standing family businesses, things like that are out there in some parts of the country are being left behind, and the folks are moving to urban centers and urban population areas. And so services, like you mentioned, right, is a primary earning function in today's environment, and how those services are paid are completely different than in years past.
Right.
And so a lot of folks are getting a 1099. And then how are they, they don't have to earn all that income, but they still earn the income, right? And then, there's other ways, of course, to interact and expand your opportunity set with the product set that Finance of America have. You had yesterday your Finance of America commercial webinar, right? And that is residential investment real estate. That is a way, and another opportunity. It is an asset-based product. Again, it's not a review of income, right? And it allows investors to come forward and finance and leverage with other people's money, right? An opportunity out there and drive income. So as an originator, one of the other ways, coming back to how do we compete in an online world, is differentiation, right? So differentiation is through not talking about the stuff that all of us already have, right? It's talking about and creating conversations around loan products that all of us investors have to support your business, right? Finance of America specifically, I think we have one product for every type of borrower, and using those as a platform for content creation, right? Which again leads back into the search function, right? And how do we discover you? And now you're becoming subject matter expert around investors and in fixing and flipping and builder developer and, renovation and bank statement. And again, all of this is creating conversations and opportunities for you that will lead to new business, right? In the meantime, you may find that those are regularly qualified borrowers that just there's an opportunity for you, right? Or they fall into one of these buckets that, frankly, a lot of people are staying away from because they are potentially there's like a fear of the unknown, right?
Exactly.
So that's where leaning on someone like myself or my peers here at Finance of America to help you expand on your product knowledge and expand on your product opportunity to, again, now we're creating content. And we have marketing tools with our FAMU. The customer can come through our system and use our flyers, right? And customize that stuff. And again, we're in the space and we're talking about something other than just a regular loan, and now we become a subject matter expert as opposed to just another sort of marketing individual, right? I have low rates.
Right.
We, guess what?
Yeah, which it
We all
kills
have low
me.
rates.
You get on social media, and when the rates dropped, it's like you start seeing them come out, and that's all they put out there. It's like, guys, rate is one component. One of the things, I'm going to loop back, just one of the things you talked about was pricing, and that this QM patch has really created burdensome disadvantage to consumers. And sometimes it is just because everybody's used to running it through automated, so it's like path of least resistance. But if you can put somebody into a bank statement loan program and it's a better price for them than running it through automated, then those are the things that you should be looking at. And those are the conversations that you have with your clients that leverages you, positions you as that expert. And so one of the things to look at, and not just saying yes more often, but saying a better yes for the consumer, is to challenge all of you to think of those kinds of possibilities as well. So not just the ones like, I didn't make it through automated, what are the other options? But is this the best for them if you are having all of those pricing adjustments?
Right.
Is it really to their advantage? Is there another alternative? And so, looking at that and then becoming that person, but being able to show them, here are the options. We can go this path, this is what you're going to get. You can go this path, this is what you're going to get.
Right.
And if you can show them that it's not just about the rate, but it's about who they are and where they are right now and the best thing for them, that's really what's important. And that's the love that you give to your clients where they send in those referrals.
Yep.
Excuse me. Okay. So that brings us to our last question, which is thinking about the long-term value of the client and their family and then that entire network that they're in. So what does that look like?
So as originators, I see a lot of folks that think about their customer, one time when they're in there, right? And then when rates fall off a cliff, like they did, let's say last summer, right? They suddenly remember to think about them again.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Remember me?
Stop. Right. Just, okay. Just from a core element, I have, by example, I have a customer originates between 65 to 200 units a year, right? It varies based on market environment and things like that.
Right.
But the one thing that individual does without missing a beat is he sends a handwritten birthday card to every single past client. And admittedly, his stack of birthday cards is now getting larger and larger, right? And there's some days, but he comes in, and a week before the birthday, he's got his calendar set up, right? And he's got a little thing, and he starts his day out writing out a handful of birthday cards, right? And it's 5, 6, 7, whatever. But it's something that simple. And you can now outsource that for a small fee, right? And have somebody else do it, right? But that gives him the early entree for consideration on the return, right? And what I see a lot of folks missing opportunities on is remarketing their customers with any of the content things that we've just been talking about here today, right? It may not have relevance to that individual that they're sending the marketing to, and that person will just hit delete. Or it might conversationally come up with, oh, here's an originator that I worked with, and they're doing something that a friend of mine was complaining they weren't able to get something done, right? And they start the conversation.
Right.
There's different figures in the marketplace. It's about 14% that we retain. It's 7 to 14%, right? If 100 clients close with you as an originator, you're going to keep between 7 and 14 of those clients and work with them again in the future.
Right.
So it's about attention, right? It's capturing and keeping in front of them from a thought process standpoint, and again, we're in a different space, but you do have to think back to the realtor concept at the beginning of the conversation where they're spending a healthy portion of their income to be constant top of mind, because remember, a real estate agent's only going to work with a client once every 7 to 10 years.
Right.
Buying and selling a house, right? So they really have to be out there. A mortgage borrower may work with you between, the average age of a mortgage loan in the lead up through 2011 or 12 was 7 years. Today it might be lower, but at the same time, people are staying in their houses longer.
Right.
So that means that a house, so someone buys a home today, in most markets, it's closer to 10 years and it's creeping up. We have aging in place. And so now we're getting to a point where in some markets, it's 12 to 15 years.
Right.
On average, right? That means there's a huge portion that are way above that. And then there's a group that are below that, but the average is very long.
Right.
So if your borrower is staying in their community that much longer, their direct neighborhood that they purchased their home in the last 10 years, right, that much longer, your opportunities are escalating with that consumer if you stay in front of them more consistently.
Right.
And then it comes a conversation of down the road, if, again, here's a consumer, you might have worked with them when they were in their 40s and in their 50s, right? And it might have been the case that, home equity was a tool for them to accomplish goals in life, right. Investment in the market and long-term returns, right? Paying for college education, right? Forever and a day, we saw folks use cash out refinance to pay off debt and consolidate payments and reduce their monthly exposure, right? And then there's been any number of other uses for a mortgage loan. So how do you talk to that consumer once they get toward the end? And we've been talking about the future of work and the beginning of the life cycle. Well, okay, so now that same consumer is moving through and they've lived in this home for 15 to 20 years. It's the family home, right? Mm-hmm. Now we're talking about grandkids and, having family over at the holiday and things like that, right? And at the same time, of course, the American real estate market has rebounded and most markets have fully recovered beyond their 2007 highs, right?
Right.
So if that's all the case, there's now equity position in place. And with an aging consumer set, someone's been paying on a mortgage for 10 to 15 years. They're going to have, between pay down and appreciation, they'll have an equity opportunity. But how are they planning for the last 30 to 40 years?
Right.
So what are the products that you can offer that consumer to be able to plan for it, right, in a more logical manner, and they still get to stay in their home without having to sell? And in California, a lot of people are selling, right? Yeah. Their markets have gotten exponentially expensive. They had the family home, and for them, the opportunity was, well, there's so much darn equity. I can sell this house and buy 2 houses in cash.
Right. Yeah. Well, and a lot of families we're seeing a change as far as multi-generational housing. And so calling your customers and just checking in on them, how are things going? If they have had grandchildren, are the children moving back in? And we're starting to see more and more of that. We do a lot of webinars on the renovation home loan.
Yep.
And so, looking at that, in fact, last year, William shared that was one of the biggest uses for the renovation home loan was to be able to make a home to where it was ADA. And so what does that look like? Yep. So I think having those conversations and, email is probably one of the most ineffective methods now to be able to have those conversations. So looking at other ways to be able to reach out. I like the idea of the birthday card.
It's silly that it's that easy, but it's also, look, in practice, it's hard, right? I know because I've added it as a layer to my sales practice.
Right.
Adding the birthday piece, I get the reminder, and all it would take for me to do is go in there and punch the email out real quick. And I still don't necessarily do it every single time. Right. So then I end up saying happy belated birthday, Well,
if you want to do something, do something on St. Patrick's Day, do something on a different holiday, do something that's different. And you can look to other means, video I love video. I know you love video. And so, if you don't want to send out a birthday card, grab your phone, pick up your phone, record a video. If you have BombBomb, you can, send it out through BombBomb, or you can just send a text and
Yep.
just say, hey, I just wanted to wish you a happy birthday. I've been thinking about you. I hope everything is well. I'm going to call you next week and catch up, but I just hope you have a great birthday. Boom, shoot a video.
Yep.
They're not getting that from people. I mean, they're just not doing that. And so, switch it up a little bit. One of the things, and it really is what prompted you and I to have this conversation and to start this series, is at the beginning of the year, you sent out a text.
Yes.
And so it was a New Year's text, and you sent it out. I don't know what app did you use? Avocado? Did you use? There's apps that you can send out texts.
So I use the Hit 'em Up app.
The Hit 'em Up. Okay, so there's Hit 'em Up. There's Avocado. Maybe I'll do that webinar next month on technology apps. So things like Slide Dialer and Hit 'em Up and Avocado and all those things. So type into the chat box or the Q&A box. Let me know if you guys want to know about tech tools that can help you to stand out, like what Raoul was talking about. And so he sent that out as a text. It went to me. I honestly thought it was just a personal text to only me. I'm like, oh my gosh, Raoul's thinking about me. And it was, hey, Happy New Year's back to you. We set up a call. And that was what your message was. And so I was actually in Dallas a couple weeks ago with Nate Clear with First Funding, who's also one of my clients. And we were just talking about that. And he said, yeah, he goes, I got the same thing. And we set up a call. And it's like, so how many calls did you get? How many responses did you get? How many calls did you get? How much more business did you get because of that?
For me, it didn't drive new business opportunity. It was a test, right? I did run it with a large cohort of target customers, as well as with my industry counterparts. So, I've got a large network of folks in the business, and I wanted to be able to reach out. I did get a lot of positive feedback just in terms of conversations, right? Text today, I think there was a survey I saw, something like north of 65% of consumers would not object to a text message from anybody, even from someone in the marketing space, which is to say you guys as originators, right?
Right.
And so if you think about the barriers to entry, then it's gotten easier to communicate.
Yeah.
And also to get in front of your consumers. But how are you doing it, and how do you do it in a way that's non-invasive, right? And so that's the way I used it. I used it as a sort of an outreach, and used it as a way to kind of create a touch base and a touch point. And, I think I got to 200 different people in a personalized way within a space of 15 minutes.
Yeah. And you did. I mean, when you sent that, first of all, it was a text, so it was different. It wasn't, something that was an email, because we get 10 million emails a day. Most of them, it's swipe and delete, swipe and delete.
Yep.
And so, it's text. You look at text. I look at text all the time. I always tell people, if you want to reach me, send me a text.
All my originators have outgoing messages. They're like, you can text me on this number and I'll be calling you back faster or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Well, and using that, Gary Vaynerchuk started a texting message chain, and I subscribed to it. And it's funny because on the first message, it says, okay, this is the automated message. This is the only one you're going to get from me that's automated. The rest are going to be from me personally.
Yeah.
And so every once in a while, it's random and it's short. It's a text, so it's not a long message, but it just keeps you top of mind. So finding those things that are top of mind. Okay, so we're going to close it out. We could have a conversation all day, which is great. So I want you to close this out with your top 3 things that people need to do to stand out, to use different business plans as far as different programs, and then to be able to be that top of mind.
Yeah, so obviously we've talked about Google as, again, I'm always surprised at how many people are not there, right? So take the time, get on the space, get in the mix on that, right? I really love the text messaging element, but don't forget to go offline as well in your marketing efforts, right? And be consistent with your marketing. If it's even if it's as little as a quarterly newsletter, right? But go and go offline, and don't be afraid that offline is a waste of time and money.
Exactly.
Remember that you are creating an opportunity a year from now. It doesn't have to be an immediate. And so just continue to think about that, and then use the various products that Finance of America have between fix and flip and non-QM and reverse and, renovation as ways to interact with your database, right? And to have a conversation and use all the available tools that are out there for social and online that are at no cost to you. But, make the effort to learn how to utilize them, because even a minuscule amount of content, I mean, I've had people reach out to me in my function as sales, from business to business sales, 2 years after I put something on it out in the space, right? And they say, "Oh, I saw you, blah blah blah," and then, here comes the opportunity, and that's the part that a lot of folks forget about, out there when they're thinking about the work that I'm doing today.
Right.
It's not going to be an immediate necessarily response. However, as you leave the trail to your business, so to speak, your consumer finds you in event, and more consumers find you over time. And that's the part that you have to remember. So, and we're here as a business of Finance of America from a wholesale perspective to be able to support you guys and to help you create differentiation that ultimately drive revenue, regardless of what's happening in the market space. So yes, rates are low right now, and we should all be hunting and making hay in the sun, right? But remember, markets go through cycles. And if everybody's at a 3 rate, the minute we go to 3 and 6, it's going to be like, oh, the wheels came off. So you have to continuously market, and you have to continuously put yourself out there in a number of ways to drive long-term results.
Right. And to create a plan to do that too. I think if you have a long-term strategy and plan, and you bring in these other pieces that we've talked about into that and start slowly doing it, then that is to a great advantage. So, Raoul, I want to thank you, first of all, for inspiring me to be able to say, hey, let's share this conversation that we're having, because it's valuable. You're actually one of my favorite people that I get the opportunity to work with. So I enjoyed our conversation, and always a wealth of knowledge. And so let us know what other things you want to talk about. We're going to do these monthly. I'm going to have a different account executive on every month. So we're going to circle all the way around, and just let you have some ideas on some tools that you can use in your business. So, Raoul, thank you so much. For those of you who are on with us, I want to thank you for joining. And we have webinars every month. If you want to see our webinars, you can go to FAMU. That's available, and you can log in from the portal, so you can log in there. And I was in there the other day. We have close to 100 courses in there. So I've been building that university for the past 3 years, and there's flyers in there that you can download and personalize, resources and tools to be able to help you. So in addition, obviously, to all the wonderful programs at Finance of America, the support tools, and as you said, we are here to support you. So thanks, Raoul. Thanks to everyone else, and we'll see you on an upcoming webinar.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys. Bye.